So welcome back, everybody. I'm Hope Hines, and I am in charge. How about that, guys?
It's a little scary.
I haven't been that way for a long, long time here.
The chair.
But I am joined by two wonderful gentlemen, George Plaster, Kevin Ingram. You come from two different worlds. But you still like each other, and you still hang out from time to time, don't you?
And if need be, he can be me.
Hey, now, hang on a second. You think I don't know what's going on over there?
Kevin, you could make a lot of money doing that. Why don't you give it this radio thing you're doing and
really
go be a star?
Yeah, my son tells me my impersonations aren't very good, and I tell him part of the reason we live in this house is because of my impersonations.
Well, you got to spend more time doing it. Well, guys, we're here on an important mission tonight. You know, Mark Howard, God rest his soul, he's listening. I have a feeling he's listening tonight at everything that's being said about him, so be careful. He may have a way of getting back. I don't know.
Making notes, I would say,
exactly.
probably.
Always making notes.
I don't think he's doing any of it. I think he's watching the Yes Network.
Yeah, probably.
His
Or the
go-to
Yankees.
channel. That's
Or
where the
the
Yankees
Yankees,
are.
yeah,
That's
the
his
Yankees,
go-to
yeah,
channel.
exactly.
God
So,
knows I heard about that.
Let's start. You knew Mark longer than perhaps a lot of people here in town did, George. Your first entree into Mark Howard was
gosh. Greer Stadium, I want to say, was it 86 that you hired him?
Yep.
So he comes out to a Sounds game. I was doing Sounds games on radio, and we're in the Sounds dugout. This is hour and a half before the game, and he decides to basically give me like a sporting news anthology of all the baseball he knows.
You weren't the only one he did that to.
No, I know it.
Yeah.
But I think for him, a lot of times he would judge you by whether you knew baseball. Don't you think there was
I
some truth
agree.
to that?
True.
I agree.
If
that's
you
what,
knew
that's
who-
what he grew up on.
Yeah, if you knew who Bobby Tolan was, then you were okay. And if you knew who Jim Leyritz was, oh, you got like bonus points.
And if you could name one guy in the triple team starting lineup for the Yankees you were in, I mean, you know, that's all he cared about. But he hung on that.
And I could do that. And that started all these phone calls.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hear all this stuff about him, the humanitarian. Oh, my God, the arguments we got into over the phone,
Well.
Yankees, Braves, sports in general.
Giants.
Oh, my God. I mean, it just, it was endless. It was like a talk show without a radio station.
Right, right. Mr. Ingram, you worked side by side with this guy for 20-something years.
Yeah.
What is your lasting impression of Mark Howard?
Lasting impression, Mark in a hoodie would be one of my lasting impressions. You know, I probably knew Mark for over 20 years. I watched him. I grew up an hour up the road in Bowling Green. So, I mean, I watched him on TV for years with you and Channel 5 because that was one of our main channels. Right. But I got to know him probably, well, I moved here in 1998, and I knew him most of the time I lived here. One of the first times that I had much interaction with Mark was I filled in for Joe Fisher on a Vanderbilt football game one time, and Mark saw him at a Titans game or something not long after that, and he came up to me and told me what a good job I did. And that really meant a lot because, I mean, Mark was a big, you guys talked about it earlier, Mark was a big star in this market, and that meant a lot that he came up and told me that, whether I thought I did or not. I mean, that really meant something.
Mark Howard had a huge heart, and he was not short on compliments, nor was he short on criticism, if he thought that about you as well. And I think we all know that. We all got it. We all got it. Yeah, we did.
Did I get both?
Yes, exactly. It took me a while. You know, Mark came from Connecticut. It's not exactly Mason-Dixon line. So
it's not South Georgia.
You better believe that. When he first came here and the phone would ring.
What do you want?
No. Here we go. Phone would ring. Yeah. And I said, Mark, stop, time out. We don't do that in the South. It took years. He was still,
Oh, it never totally took because he would call you and there was no pleasantries or hey, how you doing? It was right into whatever was going on. I was like, you know what's going on, right?
Because he was so focused on what was going on in the monitor up here that he was watching while he was getting his sportscast ready. So George, you knew Mark away from the microphone, as well as anybody did. He had his flaws, like we all do. He had his weaknesses, like we all do. But overall, as a sports guy, as a personality, he fit very well in this community.
Oh, yeah, because I think that there is another side. You know, we paint the side of him that could want an answer right now or be a little demanding, but there was also that heart. You know, what Kevin is saying, I've heard any number of times that he would go to somebody, you know, starting a career and say, hey, I heard this, I really like it. Mark was really good about that. And that probably surprised some listeners when they first heard that. I got to tell you one, though.
Go ahead. That's why we're here.
Before his sports talk stuff started, he was doing a show, and you remember this, with Charlie Monk.
Oh, boy.
And they were doing.
I remember that.
Okay.
And Carl P. Mayfield.
Right.
Mixed in there somewhere.
And they're talking about, one day, I'm listening to they're talking about the Gaza Strip. And so I called
That is not surprising.
I called him that night and I said, what the hell do you know about the Gaza Strip? And so I went to
But he did know.
He did know.
He did know.
And he had notes. He had reams of notes. I mean, that pad wouldn't even begin to start it. But I went to
his phone numbers here.
I went to our general manager, Steve Dickert, and I said, Steve, who's kidding who? Mark needs to be doing sports talk. We need to have a morning show to go with what we're doing in the afternoon. And
and that's how it happened.
That is how it happened.
Yeah. So he owes you.
Owe me some money.
He owes.
I owe you way before that. If it wasn't for Plaza, I'd probably would have been gone back home a long time ago.
And what thanks did I get for it? You're doing me behind my back.
Yeah, well, that's the thanks you get from me.
So
that's all I can give.
At least do it in front of me.
No.
So one of the inside stories from the radio front, Kevin, can you let our listeners in on? And a lot of people out there in our viewing audience tonight are watching and remembering Mark Howard, and they have their own, you know, television, well, radio too, radio and television is all about perception. You know that? It's what you perceive somebody to be. It's what you perceive someone to say when they say it. Although I said it this way, I didn't mean it that way.
Right.
Sound like coaches, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's exactly the way they do it. But the point is, what was something inside of that radio studio that just drove you crazy about Mark Howard? Just got on your nerves like nothing.
I think at times just how argumentative he can be. I'll tell you this story. We were having an argument one time. It was on the air and off the air, and I think it was about Nolan Ryan and about whether he was overrated or properly rated or whatever. Mark said he was overrated, and I took the other side, and we went back and forth. So the next day on the show, we had a guest on to talk about Nolan Ryan and his career, and I accused Mark of booking a guest to try to win an argument. And he denied it all the way to the end, but he knew I was right. He knew that I knew that he knew. But but the thing about our show was a lot of it was basically pro wrestling. Whether it was me and Mark and Frank or Blaine Bishop in later years,
Right.
You know, we'd hit each other over the head with chairs in the studio, but then when it was over, it was over. It was all kind of, it was all good-natured. Sometimes the arguments would spill over, but
a lot of times.
Well,
okay, but for the most part, it was because you're doing sports. I mean, it's not, you're not talking about the Gaza Strip.
And you know what? When you do a sports talk show, except for George Plaster's show, George is a whole different animal, I think. But I'm saying it from this standpoint. In that kind of show, you need that guy who's on the cutting edge. You want that guy to be sandpaper. Your show is clean and fun. And no, seriously, you guys are right down the middle. So you're controversial when you need to be, but that was what Mark's role was for a long, long time. Just like Paul Kaharski when they brought Paul Baby on, right? Yeah. That was his role to be. And that's the way talk radio is across America. That's the way it was.
And my role is to be sort of in the middle.
Sure.
You know, and you know, you want that conflict in those arguments because that's what you're right. That's what makes it good.
That's what sells it.
Yeah, that's what sells it. Yeah. That's what people want to hear.
So how have you maintained not being that controversial all these years, George, and lasted?
You know, I don't know. I guess we all develop some sort of style. I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning, but I will tell you this. I remember walking in on them one morning, and Mark had, oh my God, it was just reams of notes. And I would go in and have 0 notes. And Mark is giving me this whole why you have to have all these. And I'm like, who are you telling this to? I've been doing this longer
I'm the big daddy in town.
I've been doing this longer than you have.
I've been doing this show for 20 years. Let me tell you something.
Thank you. Well done. But, you know,
All right,
His way
I
was
gotta go to a break.
Go ahead.
You know about
Do you
breaks.
remember how to do that?
I do. You know how to do it, Kevin?
Yes,
We'll take a break.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with more about Mark Howard right after this. Stay with us.